going on, everybody? That's right. It's the Gimme. We're back. The first Gimme of 2023. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to break down everything from the Sentry Tournament of Champions out at Kapalua, the most beautiful place on earth. I'm Jason Sobel. He's Roberto Arguello, and we are going to give you our favorite outrights, our favorite props, matchups, first-round leader bets, and a whole lot more coming up over the next little bit. Reminder, the Gimme is presented by Bet365, the world's favorite sportsbook brand. Sign up with promo code ACTION, ACTION, to get Bet365's exclusive sign-up offer in New Jersey, Colorado, and Ohio. Bet $1 on any game, get $200 for free. Let's take a look at the top of the board for this week's Sentry Tournament of Champions. Jon Rahm, he's your favorite. Last year, all he did was shoot 33 under and lost. He's never done that before. He shot 33 under for 4 rounds. He is plus 650. Scotty Scheffler, who was number 1 in the world for much of last year, the reigning Masters champion, plus 850. Xander Schauffele, and we'll get into this, Roberto. Xander Schauffele, not 100%, might not tee off tomorrow, so keep an eye on that. But as of right now, he remains at plus 1,000. Same with his buddy, Patrick Cantlay, who's getting all sorts of crap on social media for wearing a t-shirt and shorts and black shoes with white socks. I guarantee, Roberto, like 99% of the people who are criticizing Cantlay on Twitter are sitting there in their mustard-stained shirt and some 20-year-old gym shorts. Like, give me a break, guys. Anyway, JT, plus 1,100, 11-1. We'll talk a lot about him. And Tony Finau rounds out the top of the board. He is 14-1. Roberto, I'm not sure you know this or not, but the good folks at the Action Network have handed each of us $100.
I'm ready. I've got my Benjamin in my back pocket. I'm ready to spend it.
I mean, I don't like just leaving it sitting around. So we might as well, I don't know, gamble with it or something. All right. We're going to start our portfolios with a pair of outright bets. Give it a whirl. What you got?
All right. So show is presented by Bet365, and I'm going off the Bet365 board. First pick is Sam Burns. He's widely available between 25 and 28-1. But you can find him under the enhanced win on Bet365 at plus 3,000 to sweeten the deal just a little bit. And this course really suits his eye. It accentuates his strengths, which are his putting, his driving distance, and his game on approach. Specifically for putting, Bermuda greens, he's Bermuda Burns. And even though it's a little bit slower Bermuda, some people describe it as Velcro, it still suits him. And his weaknesses, driving accuracy, not going to be a huge issue here on these fairways that have huge width. So I really like him this week. Around the green is not going to be super tough. It's not a strength of his game, not really a weakness either. He's more about average on tour. So I like that. He tied 19th here last year in his first start. And a lot of people talk about how this is a course that you need some familiarity with. There are a lot of slopes. It can play different ways depending on if there's wind, if it's playing soft because of the rain, like it did last year. Hopefully it plays a lot more firm and fast this week for our viewing pleasure. And lastly, Sam Burns is a winner. Won 3 times on tour last year. I think he's a guy who has the winning equity of other guys in the, say, 20-1 range, but he's being priced at 30-1. You can get him. So it was more of a number grab for me. I like Sam Burns, and he's my first play this week. Who are you going off of?
Smart. Okay, I'll do mine next. I mentioned that we'd be talking a lot about Justin Thomas. Look, there's a few reasons that I like JT this week. First of all, 11-1 when Jon Rahm is plus 650. That just feels like I get 11-1 doesn't scream value, but when it's in comparison to some of those guys that are above him on the odds board, I feel like there is some value there on JT. He's won this golf tournament every 3 years. Oh, 2017, 2020. This is 2023. I just checked my calendar over here. Maybe the pattern keeps up, but what I like even better than this, I spoke with JT during the PNC Championship, had him on my radio show on SiriusXM PGA Tour, and he said, I asked him to assess his year, and he said, I was a little frustrated, a lot of things, I was playing good golf, but just didn't get the results out of it that I would have liked. I thought I was listening to the 133rd ranked player on the FedEx Cup list. I said, JT, you won a major this year. Like, that's pretty good. He said, yeah, I know, but I really played better than I got out of it. And then he got this really determined look on his face that I know I can do better. I'm going to do better next year. It's going to happen. Very bullish on JT. It starts this week. And oh, by the way, I'm not going to take too much from the PNC, the parent-child event. over 2 days where it's really a hit and giggle. I will tell you though, I walked with the Thomas group for both of those days. He was doing a lot more hitting than giggling. He was locked in. And I think he's played competitive golf more recently than just about anyone else in this field. A lot of guys are shaking off the cobwebs this week. You mentioned those 13 players, a third of the field who have never played before. We haven't had a first-timer at Kapalua win since Daniel Chopra back in 2008. It takes some experience here, not just some knowledge on the golf course, but all those first-timers, you know what they're doing, Roberto? They're bringing out their parents and their in-laws and their cousins and aunts and uncles, and we're going to do some whale watching. We're going to go get some sushi, and then we're going to do some paddle boarding. And, that's right. The one thing I forgot, I got to practice.
I like the JT pick. I don't love betting shorter than 15-1 on outrights, but if I had to pick someone in that range, JT might be my guy. You mentioned the elite course history, and he, among the players on the tour right now, might be the best shot shaper in that he's got more shots in his bag than just about anyone else. And people have talked about the conversation that JT had with Tiger Woods a few years ago, where Tiger said, yeah, you're a nice player right now, but you need more shots. And he's got as many as anyone else on the tour right now. That's something that he has put an emphasis on. And on a course like this, like we said, big ranges in elevation, a lot of different types of approach shots, you're going to need a complete game. And I like that a lot for JT this week. And it's shown in the past.
Where are you going with your second outright bet here?
Yeah, speaking of elite players on approach, I'm going to go with the guy who might be the best iron striker in the world when he's on. And even when he's not on, which was last year, he still finished third on the tour in strokes gained approach. And that's Colin Morikawa, guy who plays his patented fade, was playing a draw for a lot of the year last year, and still found himself in contention at the US Open among some other tournaments. He didn't get a win last year, so he's one of those players who's here in the tournament based on finishing in the top 30 of the FedEx Cup playoffs. However, he's someone who I'm going to try to buy low on right now. You mentioned that, like JT, Colin Morikawa played somewhat recently at the Hero World Challenge. He finished 6th, also played in Mayakoba, where he finished in a tie for 15th. And so he's trending up. The putter is always an issue with him, but he has shown that he's not just a terrible putter. He is a guy who can string together a few really solid rounds on the greens. And I don't need him to be a top 10 putter even in this field for him to win. He's had some success here. He's only played 3 times, but he's got a top 7 in each appearance. So I really like that. And it feels like a little buy low spot. I think he should be closer to around 15-1, but you can get him at 20-1 right now. This is a kind of a FOMO play for me. I love Colin Morikawa, probably my favorite player on the tour. And if he were to win this week and I didn't have any money on him, it would make me very sad. So initially I only had Sam Burns, but I got talked into Colin Morikawa, as I am one to do. So I'm riding with him. Who's your second play this week, Jason?
I like that. So yeah, I'm going to have a little more Morikawa investment later in the show. So I do like that play. The thing I like about it the most is that there might be a little, I don't want to say the Y word, the chipping. It hasn't been great around the greens, but you don't really need it this week. Big greens, you're not going to miss a whole lot of them. So that doesn't bother me too much about Morikawa. The second guy I'm going to, a little bit deeper number. I'm going with Russell Henley at 40-1. There aren't too many long shots that win this thing. Last year, Cameron Smith was 25-1. The year before, Harris English was 30-1. Over the last 8 years, though, it's been an average of 15-1 pre-tournament that's won this golf tournament, which shows that we've seen guys at really short numbers. Jordan Spieth in 16 was 4-1. So we have seen some very low numbers. It's usually the best of the best that show up. But Russell Henley is a guy who I think his performance has sort of outclassed his results over the last 18 to 24 months. Finally got that win at Mayakoba back in November, but I liken him to a Major League Baseball pitcher, Roberto, who goes 8-17 with a 2.72 ERA, and you look at it and you go, he pitched really well. He just didn't get the record. He just didn't get the wins. His team didn't score for him. I know that's a weird comparison. Maybe the better comparison is the NFL luck rankings that we do at the Action Network, and you look and see which teams have gotten the most out of what they're doing, which teams have gotten the least out of what they're doing. Henley has sort of gotten the least out of the way he's played, but I do believe the law of averages, which might not be a real thing, but the law of averages will come back to allow him to be near the top of the leaderboard at some point. By the way, this is also a win-win situation for me because I like Henley this week, but I really like him next week. So either I have a Henley investment this week and it goes well, and hey, all right, that worked out. Or he plays terrible golf, the number stays lower next week, and I can jump on Henley at a better number next week. So, like I said, win-win. But yeah, I like him even better at the Sony Open next week. All right, let's get to this golf course. If you don't know the Plantation course at Kapalua, I don't know what to tell you. Go get on a plane. If you're sitting there in cold weather right now, what are you doing? Get out to Hawaii. I've been to this one 6-7 times in the past. I'm telling you, the freshest, sweetest pineapple you'll ever have. The ocean breezes. You stand on the golf course, there are whales breaching out in the background. 7,596 yards. Yeah, I know. You want to know about the golf course, not everything else around it. Par 73. So, yes, the scores were very low last year, but that's in relation to par. Cameron Smith won at 34 under. John Rahm, 33 under. Matt Jones was 32. That's right. Top three on the board were a combined 99 under. I spoke on my radio show with my co-host, Michael Collins, who happened to be playing in the Pro-Am with Chad Ramey and his buddy Ken Griffey Jr. today. I know, way too much name dropping. That said, Collins called in from the golf course and said, it's very soft. Expect some good scoring conditions once again. So on Bet365, we can play essentially what are over-unders for the final leaderboard position. So if you're looking at, say, Colin Morikawa, his number is 13th or better this week. You'd either play, all right, I think he's 13th or better, or 14th or worse, and you can take the number either way. I think it's a really nice way of getting some investment on a few players that you don't think are going to win, but you think might do better or worse than they have. We're going to buy and sell one player each. Roberto, who are you buying?
I am buying Adam Scott. So Scott really fits this course well. So looking at this course, there are going to be a lot of short par fours where I'm looking at players who have elite games under 100 yards, elite wedge play, which is why I really like your Russell Henley play. And in addition to that, I'm also looking at guys who excel on shots over 200 yards into some of these longer par fives, into a couple longer par fours as well. Adam Scott ranked 10th in proximity under 100 yards on tour last year, and he ranked 9th in proximity over 200 yards last year. So he fits the statistical profile on approach for this course. He also has been putting a lot better. We know that he got set back because of the anchoring ban, but that's really been coming around for him, and the slow Bermuda should suit his eye. He also has great course history, a lot of success out on the island this week in Maui, but he hasn't been playing in this tournament recently. So hopefully, because he hasn't won a ton. So now that he's out there, hopefully he can get those good vibes going in the right direction. And even though he hasn't played a tournament on the fall swing for the PGA Tour, he did play 3 tournaments on the DP World Tour and 1 on the Japanese Tour. And his most recent tournament was a solo second at the Australian Open at the beginning of December. So we know he's in some good form. I don't know that he's going to win this week, but I think he's got a really high floor. And that's why to finish in the top half of the field this week out of 39 players to finish 19th or better, I think it's a solid value, even though I'm playing a little juice at -120 there at Bet365. Who are you buying this week, Jason?
So first, I like the Scott play. I had him as a top 10 play in my preview column this week. Talked about him on the podcast, Links and Locks with Ben Everill, who's an Aussie writer based here in the U.S., writes for the PGA Tour, knows the Australian players really well. And I asked him, does Adam Scott like this golf course? Because you're right, he has a spotty playing record here. There's been a lot of times when Adam Scott just took an extended vacation and didn't play this event. And Benny said, trust me, he loves this golf course. He's really excited to be back. That makes me excited to play him this week. So I do like that. I'm going to buy Colin Morikawa, another guy that you mentioned just a few minutes ago. And I told you it's 13th or better this week. All he's done in 3 career starts at this event has been 7th or better every single time. That feels like a smash play to me. I'm throwing $20 of my portfolio, 1/5 of it, on Colin Morikawa. All he's got to do is finish in the top third of the field. There's 39 players, maybe only 38 if Xander Schauffele isn't healthy enough to play. That feels like a lot of value on a guy who, you said everything about him. He's one of the best ball strikers in the world. Last year was a down year, and he finished 3rd on the PGA Tour in ball striking. And so I do
Absolutely
like that.
ridiculous.
Who are you selling? What's that?
Absolutely ridiculous how good that is for a down year.
So good.
I
So good.
can't imagine. So on the other hand, I'm going to sell KH Lee. I forgot to mention the dollar amount. I bought Adam Scott for $20 at 19th or better. I'm selling KH Lee for 21st or worse finish this week, only doing $10. He's outside my top 30 players in this field. So I think there's a little value there. He's not terrible at any of the strokes gain metrics, either off the tee, on approach, around the greens, or around the greens, but he's not elite in anything. And in a field with a bunch of elite players, that leaves something for me to want there. He's also got not great course history. Only one tournament played out here in Maui, and that was a T33 last year. So not great. And he's just a volatile player who is not always super consistent. So in 25 worldwide starts last year, he only finished in the top 24 times. So he's pretty boom or bust. And most of the time he's been bust. So even though it's not a normal tournament, the top 20 this week isn't the same as a top 20 in most weeks with 100 plus players in the field. I'll still take my chances with him finishing 21st or worse this week. We know he got in here because he's won the same tournament twice in Dallas the last couple of years. But outside of that tournament, it's been somewhat of a struggle for him.
Yeah, you're right about that. There is volatility, and he tends to be a course horse where there might only be a few places he plays well. He plays those places well every single year. This isn't necessarily one of them. I have no problem with that play. I am selling a little trepidation. I'm only throwing $10 on this. I don't love it. I'll admit it. I'm selling Scotty Scheffler. That usually doesn't work out very well. I don't know if you guys know this. I'm going to dig deep into the stats, and I found the stat in here. It says Scotty Scheffler, really good at golf. I'm taking him to finish 9th or worse this week. He was 13th last year. Again, at some point, not everyone can finish in the top 10 this week. I'll mention in just a minute another guy that I like for a top 10. We've got Morikawa up there. I've got JT. I've got Henley. There's a lot of players. At some point, it can't be everybody. I'm fading Scheffler this week. I don't have a lot of good reasons other than I just don't quite see this being a course fit for him. That said, the 4 courses he won on last year were 4 of the most different golf courses around. And if he can win on those 4, he can win anywhere. And it can certainly happen for him this week. So again, only $10. I'm nervous about it. There are times when I tell you, hey, I really like this. You got to tail. You don't have to tail that one. I'm just saying. I'm being honest with you there. All right. Let's take a look at where the money is going this week. And apparently much of it's going into the same 3 places because the highest ticket percentage, the highest handle, and the highest liability are all going to the same 3 in the same order. Number 1, sorry guys, must have been all me. Justin Thomas has the highest ticket percentage, handle, and liability. Oops. Did I do that? Was that me getting all that? Number 2 is Sung J M, who I'm going to speak about in just a minute. Number 3 is Xander Schauffele. And I do want to get into this real quick because he's got a little bit of a back injury. There are reports that he may be getting an MRI. What I can tell you about this, Roberto, is 2 things. First of all, if you're a golfer and you have a back injury and you're an elite level player and it's the first week of the year, you're probably going to play it safe and not go out there and try to test it and hurt yourself more. You've got a long year coming up. Be cautious. The second part of this, which I think people don't really realize, that, look, I'm not there. I don't really have any inside information, but usually there's a lot less support staff in Maui than there is at most other PGA Tour events. So I don't know if he's got a physio there. I don't know if he's got a trainer. I don't know if he's working with someone maybe at the hotel. He may have nobody with him. And so this is tough. If Xander Schauffele was at the U.S. Open right now, he would have somebody there that works with him that can get him maybe in better shape to go tee off on Thursday. Being at Maui, again, I don't know this for sure. Maybe someone went out there with him because he wasn't feeling 100%, but it's tougher to find people to help you with these things, whether it's getting a club fixed or working on your back or anything else at this event than any other event, just because it's hard to get out to Maui at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, hopefully he's all right and makes the right decision this week. Obviously, we don't know much more about his situation. But speaking of injured backs, I am pleasantly surprised to see Will Zalatoris in the field this week. We saw him get injured. I believe it was at the BMW Championship in the second round of the FedEx Cup playoffs last year. He's back this week after missing the entire fall schedule along with the Tour Championship. So I'm going to be very interested in seeing how Will Zalatoris does this week after that back injury, and fingers crossed there are no re-injuries for him either.
I think it's going to be a big year for Zalatoris. I also think it may take 6 to 8 weeks before he gets into the groove once again. He said he finished Netflix. Like I reached the end of it. Been there with you, Will. It's been a long off season. All right, let's keep filling out our portfolios. Let's get to one prop bet, one matchup. Where are you going with your first one, Roberto?
Well, this is going to be a familiar pick because, like like you wrote in your Monday article, I am also going with Adam Scott top 10. It's available at plus 320 out there. I'm doing this for $20. This is my favorite play of the week. I liked the Scott in addition at 19th or better this week, a little safer, but this number at plus 320, I love it. And you could get it as he's priced in the market as low as plus 200 at most books, somewhere between plus 200 and plus 250 for this. So even handicap aside, just looking at the numbers, there's value here, judged by how the market is pricing him. And like we said, the proximity under 100 yards, over 200 yards really fits him this week. Great course history, loves the course, in strong form. I think he's worth a shot as well on somewhat of an escalator here for top 10 in addition to the 19th or better.
Yep, totally agree. Like you said, I have him in the preview column that I wrote earlier this week. Depending on the content that you read at the Action Network, I've got in each spot either Sungjae Im for a top 5 or Sungjae Im for a top 10. Look, I like him this week. It just depends whether you want to be a little more aggressive and get a better number, or you want to be a little more conservative. I'm going to play him here for the top 5. I like being aggressive here. I think it's going to be a tremendous year for Sungjae. He went from nomad to newlywed. He's now married, so maybe that helps him settle down a little bit, at least find a location. I'm going to throw $15 on Sungjae, top 5 at plus 300. He's finished top 5 in 3 of his last 8 starts in official PGA Tour events going back to last year. And he's got a 5th place finish already at Kapalua in his young career. All right, let's go in for a matchup.
So for this matchup, I'm going to shout out my friend Spencer Aguiar, also part of the Links and Locks podcast with Nick Bretwish and me. He is probably the best person I know at handicapping matchups. And we both wanted to fade Viktor Hovland. I initially saw odds on Tony Finau against Viktor Hovland and jumped on that, but he found some odds on Cameron Young to beat Viktor Hovland at plus 100 instead of a juiced minus 130. So I'm going to play that one. Cameron Young plus 100 over Viktor Hovland for $20. And one reason why I like Cameron Young is because of his elite off the tee and wedge play combination. He ranks first off the tee plus short iron proximity this week. And we saw that on stage at the Open Championship last year, where he was absolutely bombing the ball around St. Andrews. And not only that, but capitalizing on those opportunities with his strong putting and elite wedge play. On the other hand, Viktor Hovland, who is normally a very accurate driver of the golf ball, he gets a little bit of a penalty this week with the fairways being so wide. And around the green, like you said, isn't going to be a huge issue this week. However, their big greens and the Velcro surface won't suit him with his 3-putt avoidance numbers that aren't great. Sure. He projects worse on the slow Bermuda than normal PGA Tour course. Like I said, Tony Finau, if you can only get him over Viktor Hovland or even Matt Fitzpatrick, I think they're both solid options.
Okay, I've got everything exactly the same as that. Cameron Young, plus 100, just not over Viktor Hovland. I do like that. I don't have a problem with that play. I am taking him, though, over Matt Fitzpatrick. You mentioned everything that I was going to say about Cameron Young. He was second in strokes gained off the tee last year. He has very quickly turned himself into one of the best drivers of the golf ball already. And while I don't love players who are making their debut in this event, Cam Young's just a guy who's not going to be, too worried about like, oh, let's go out and do some fun things around Maui. This guy's he just gets down to business. I think every week is a business trip, not a vacation for Cameron Young. I'm taking him over Matt Fitzpatrick, the reigning U.S. Open champion. The reason I'm doing that, already mentioned, 34 under won this event last year. There's another player at 33, at 32. Matt Fitzpatrick, he loves it when it's a par fest, not a birdie fest. He loves grinding out bars, not making mistakes, keeping himself in play. This might be the worst possible format for Fitzpatrick. I give him credit for going there. I'm sure it's part of the PIP. I'm not sure he's going to love it. This isn't really his style. Got to go out there and make a whole lot of birdies. I just see Young having a whole lot of value in that matchup over Fitzpatrick this week. All right, last portfolio bet, last but not least, because literally it's the first one that we can cash this week. Let's get to our first round leaders. Roberto, give me a good one. What you got?
All right. Before I get to the first round leader, just wanted one more comment on Cameron Young. You said Michael Collins noted that it's wet out there. It's going to be playing longer, and it's going to be playing a little easier as well. That's got to favor Cameron Young and his elite off the tee game as well.
By the way, speaking about it being long, Not if you're playing in the Pro-Am and you're Michael Collins. And I don't know what tees they put him on, but my man, when he was on with us, he was teeing off a par 5 from 322 yards. He handed the phone to Ken Griffey Jr., who was in the cart with him, and Griffey is just riding him about playing a par 5 from 322. And no, he didn't reach the green, but he said he had a wedge in from there. I'm like, dude, what are you even doing?
He's got the setup there all right. But going to our first round leader, I am playing Hideki Matsuyama at plus 3,100, only putting $5 on this. This is a buy low spot on an elite iron player who has a history of success here. Like a couple of the other players I played this week, he's had success around Augusta National, obviously with the win, like Adam Scott. He has the elite approach play, but the thing is a question about whether he is healthy. Last year, I was fading him quite frequently just because he wasn't himself, and he was fighting through it, give him credit, but he's gotten some time off now, and he's made the trip over this week instead of next week when he would be defending his crown at the Sony Open. That is a tell for me that he's ready, and he's had the course success here. I think this number is a little bit low for a player of his caliber, and I don't know how many other opportunities, if he is healthy, that we'll have to bet on him like this. And if he's not healthy, then I'm only throwing away $5 and we can move on and maybe not play him like this going forward. But I'm going to be watching Hideki Matsuyama. I'm going to learn something from him this week, whether it works out or not for him.
Yeah, I like taking some chances on first round leader bets. I'm certainly not going too high on the board. Aaron Wise is a player that I'm going to have a lot of investments in. If you're watching the Gimme every single week, Wednesday, 5:30 p.m., every single week we'll be here. Aaron Wise is a name that I'm going to mention maybe as much as any other name out there because I think there's still value on him, and I really think this is going to be a stepping stone type season for him. Last year, he was last year he was 10th in round 1 scoring average. This year he's 5th in round 1 scoring average. Look, he's the kind of guy that can go out there and go low, and certainly having played this golf course before, he knows a little bit. Again, I'm not going in much for this one. It's a first round leader bet. We're throwing darts, but I certainly don't mind that. All right. New to the show this year, we're going to make a one and done pick every single week. If you don't know one and dones, get involved. They're fun. It's like a survivor pool, except you don't get knocked out when the stupid Giants beat the Titans in week 1 or whatever you're doing in your NFL pool. Those survivor pools were terrible this year. One and done pools, essentially what you got to do is pick one player every week. Can't pick a player twice. I've got an entire piece. It's way too long, but there's lots of strategy, tips, advice on who to pick for every event from now through the end of August. 38 PGA Tour events, and you can go there and maybe that'll give you a little extra knowledge. One thing that I've written is that unlike 5-10 years ago, I've been doing one and done for 25 years now, but it used to be, all right, my 4 best players are going to the 4 major championships. Now, with the elevated events on the PGA Tour, these guys are going to be making a lot of money no matter what week it is. And so I think you actually find some leverage if you use some of the better players on weeks when they're not playing major championships. And so that's what I'm going to do this week. I'll save mine for a second. Where are you going with yours?
Yeah, so you mentioned the elevated events where the purses are $15 to $20 million each week really make this a little bit more complicated, and it adjusts how you have to adjust your strategy for the whole year. And most importantly, I'm going to try to keep the best players in the world available for the Tour Championship because they can win $20 million ish that week, which is more than the whole purse this week. So I'm going to try to hit on the guy who starts number 1 in the Tour Championship and save that for later. Yeah. So this week I'm going with Adam Scott, triple dipping with him. I think he fits this track. He's not someone who I think will win the Tour Championship, but he's a course fit this week. He's a buy low opportunity here for me. And I know he's in good form from the second place finish at the Australian Open last month. So I'm going to play Adam Scott this week. Who you got, Jason?
Very interesting. Something you mentioned there. Most of the one and dones I do, and I've joined a couple of new ones this year, and I've got to look at the rules. It was the first rule of joining one and dones is know the rules. And I broke my rule because I don't know the rule on that as to whether they're giving out the Tour Championship money or it's sort of prorated, because you're right. If there is $20 million at the end, you definitely want to save some of those guys. That's a very interesting strategy. Do you save them for the end and maybe not use a couple of the best players? Very interesting. In any case, I'm burning one of the best players in the world right now. I actually have number 3, maybe number 4 if Cameron Smith is still considered an active player, whatever we say about that. But I've got it Rory, then Rahm, then either Smith or JT, and I'm taking JT this week. Like I said, win equity is as high as it's going to be all year. You like JT in a major? Guess what? The U.S. Open's got 156 players. The Masters is going to have 90-something players. They've got 39 other players this week. He is going to be able to beat a lot of them this week. Even if he doesn't win, I just don't see him finishing too far down that board. All right, recapping our portfolios from the show. Roberto goes Burns and Morikawa outrights, buying Scott, selling KH Lee, another prop on Adam Scott, Cameron Young matchup, and Hideki Matsuyama first round leader. I've got JT and Henley for my outrights. I'm buying Morikawa, selling Scheffler, a prop on Sungjae Im, and a Cameron Young matchup play with Aaron Wise, first round leader. Remember, for more viewing content, check out Green Dot Daily at noon Eastern every single day on your favorite Action Network platform. Before we go, Roberto, give me a non-golf bet. We gotta have something here. A little side action, maybe.
I'll give you a nice juicy number. You can look at the Miami Heat plus 2,000 to win the Eastern Conference. The Celtics are backsliding right now. The Nets are rising as well, but it remains to be seen how they can play in the playoffs. They haven't gotten a win in a series with Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. The Sixers are frauds, and the Raptors have self-imploded this year, leaving the Miami Heat, who are just getting healthy, to slowly rise up. We know Jimmy Butler flips the switch in the playoffs. They were just a 3-pointer away from making the finals last year. Bam Adebayo is the best defender on the planet, and Pat Riley's always got something up his sleeve. I think they're going to make a move for a 4 at some point this year, and their number is going to get a lot shorter, under a plus 1,000 by the time the playoffs start. I like the Heat. It doesn't really matter what seed they are in the playoffs for me. As long as they're in, they're going to be dangerous.
You didn't even mention the Milwaukee Bucks. I'm selling that. There's too many teams there. I'm not taking the Heat. All right, Roberto, it's been dog season in the bowl games. All these underdogs are winning, so I'm going with the dogs in the national championship game, but not the underdogs. I'm going with the Georgia Bulldogs. Yeah, okay, lay the points. I don't care. They're going to hammer TCU. Thanks so much to everybody out there for tuning in to this episode of the Gimme. Remember, we will be here every single Wednesday, 5:30 p.m. Eastern time throughout the entire season. For Roberto Arguello, I'm Jason Sobel. Good luck with all your bets for this week's Sentry Tournament of Champions. Here's hoping you hit the green.